You sent me, Carl, a list of
Yeah.
guests. I have one of them here, two of them here. And that's it. Is there one, are they on Zoom maybe? I have Lauren and I have Matt here, but I don't know, I don't have a Michael Roberts in the room.
Okay. Everybody I see on Zoom is a member.
Okay, no big deal. Well, I have a guest who's here that isn't on your list, so we still have three guests, so that's great.
Cool.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get started. Welcome, everybody,
Yeah.
to our second presentation of the year already, hard to believe. First things first, a little housekeeping. As everybody has heard, dues, membership dues are due in 2 weeks. Or no, by today, actually, technically today is the due date for
Yeah.
membership dues.
Yeah. Today. Yeah.
If you want to participate in the competition, 2 weeks from today on February 25th, you won't be allowed to if you haven't paid. So please do that. It's really simple, but anyway, yeah, please take care of that. Some photo walk announcements. Jim Shadler and I have been spending a bunch of time putting a sort of a calendar together of photo walks for the year, and we have a lot. So I'll just give you a brief overview of the next couple. The next one's going to be on Friday, February 27th. That is a Friday, if I didn't say that already. That's at the state capitol, as well as the Court of Appeals nearby. Kind of a tour, and then the ability to take photographs of the beautiful architecture there. Bring a wide angle lens. The reason it's on a Friday is because we can only do these things during business hours. So that's not available for a weekend kind of thing.
Will we be able to go inside?
Yeah, no, it's definitely what it is. Actually, where your students at? Yeah. And there's probably lots of chairs in there.
Oh,
Saying it.
oh, it's too late.
Too late, that's right. Oh, that'll be too late.
Right, and you take
2 days too late.
right?
For the guests, the reason that's funny is because our competitions every month are themed, and the theme for this month is a chair. So anyway, the photo op we have scheduled after that is on March 14th, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I believe I have posted that on our Facebook group under the events tab. The state capitol one, I haven't done that yet and may not get to it until next week because I'm traveling for the next few days, starting tomorrow.
So I better write that down.
If you want to.
And that was the 20th.
Friday, the 27th. At 9:30 a.m. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but at 9:30 a.m. is my recollection.
And that's when the tour starts?
That's correct. Tour starts at 10.
Yeah, tour starts at 10, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we'll meet at 10:30.
And where are we meeting at?
At the main entrance of the Capitol.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there with the photo walk, but we have one scheduled for April 4th, then another one for April 24th. So anyway, these photo walks we're gonna do regularly this year because we like them and they're a lot of fun, and it's a great way to get some community going, and it's really cool. So if there was anything else I was gonna say, I can't think of it. Carl, am I missing something, or do you have any announcements?
I don't really have anything now.
Okay. Well, cool, then let's get started with our presentation tonight. Well, sorry, we have guests to.
Yeah, you want to chat to the guests? Yeah.
So I'm gonna go by order of entry into the room. Matt Gordon, will you please tell us how you found out about us and what kind of photography you like?
Hi, I'm Matt Gordon. I live half-time here and half-time in Estes Park, and I was hiking a couple of weeks ago and ran into some other photographers, and we just got talking, and they said, "Oh, there's this great group in Lone Tree." So here I am.
Cool. Who were they?
I don't know.
This is awesome. Our membership chair is doing an amazing job. Thanks for coming, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Colleen.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Colleen Fisher. I just moved to Denver a couple of months ago, so I found you through a web search
Nice.
for photography things. And kind of, is that what you asked?
Yeah, okay, what do you like to shoot?
I do a lot of international work, so travel photography and getting more into wildlife.
Excellent. And then
Matt didn't answer that question.
Oh yeah, Matt, what kind of photography do you gravitate towards?
Nature photography generally.
Yeah.
Small things mostly.
Apropos, since you were on a hike when you found out about us?
Yes, I was. I was up shooting ice in Dream Lake.
There you go. Awesome. And then I have Lauren Todd, who I actually ran into shooting a concert at the Bugs Theater last month. And she asked me how long I have been a photographer, and I told her, and I asked her how long she'd been a photographer. She said she just bought a camera the day before. So Lauren's here with her husband tonight. Lauren, tell us a little bit about.
Stand up, everyone can see me. That's my story. That's pretty much it. I met Kyle at the Bug. I volunteered down there. It's in Low Height. It's really cute. Yeah, looking to get into photography. Josh and I are going on safari in August, so I want to get good at taking pictures in preparation for that.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. And if I remember right, you had just bought a Lumix.
Yes.
I don't remember which one, but Lumix.
The 1000.
I only say that because I shoot Linux too, and we're few and far between, so it's kind of cool. All right, well, welcome guests. We hope that we see you guys down the road and in the future too. All right, McCory James is the name of our presenter tonight. Montana native and EDM enthusiast. We all know what EDM is, right?
We do. Of course we do.
For the Zoomers out there, there's maybe 4 people in the room that know what EDM is. You can Google it. Montana native and EDM enthusiast McCory James' unusually organized name is the result of a lost bet. I'm not allowed to say anymore. McCory's interest in capturing the beauty around him began in rural Montana with an old camera, continued in college where he took a black and white photography class, and then picked into high gear in his 20s while he was working for an international company where he found himself in Europe, spending his free time exploring. In 2002, he opened his own photography studio. He has traveled to more than 30 countries, mostly documenting organizations providing aid in developing countries. So I am going to turn on your microphone, and you are going to share your screen. Awesome.
There we go. Great. Everybody can see that? Awesome.
Yes,
Well,
indeed.
thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I own Click Travel Photos, which I give talks. I do workshops right now all over the Denver area. I have workshops regularly ongoing right now at Arapahoe Community College, Colorado Free University, the Colorado Photographic Arts Center, and with South Suburban as well. So all travel photography. They're about 6 to 8 hours total of time, and some of them are split up over 3 or 4 like weeknights. Some of them are split up over a couple weekend dates, and some of them are just a full day, a long day of teaching. But I have loved travel photography for many, many years. My first big trip was in 2003 to Nepal, and I just fell in love with it. I've done a lot of other types of photography to pay my bills, and I'll go into that a little bit here. But just a little bit more about me. Like you said, Montana native, been in Colorado since '98. My wife's a native, so I'm native by marriage, if nothing else. I've been doing this for 25 years. My first paying gig was in 1999, where somebody actually paid me to take photos. And then it took a few years to kind of build it up to where I could do it as a career. I do travel. Weddings have been a big part of what we do. I have a team of photographers. Right now I have 8 photographers that shoot for me. I've had as many as 20. I had locations in Phoenix and Salt Lake as well as Denver. And that was primarily with weddings. So weddings have been a great way to pay the bills. And travel and weddings, amazingly, have gone really hand in hand. I learned a lot about how to interact with people, make them comfortable with me quickly, those kinds of skills from doing travel photography and then applying it to the drunk groom on a wedding day. So Corporate events, we do a lot of corporate events, doing more and more of that all the time. We had 2 big conventions we shot last week, so that keeps us busy as well. A lot of my job is to try and keep my photographers busy so I can shoot what I want to shoot. I've done a lot of editorial, a lot of magazine work over the years, and a lot of architecture. Architecture actually used to be half of my business. So I have a passion and love for architecture. At one point, I thought I wanted to be an architect and then realized how much school there was to go to. So I decided not to go down that route, but I still loved architecture, and photography was a way to be a part of that world. Working with architects and developers and construction companies, photographing the work they do. So.
You got the light off? Is that okay with everybody?
Oh, all the way off. All right. Now it's a romantic talk. All right. So I've been to 30 countries at this point and all 50 states. Some of those states were when I was younger, so I didn't always have a camera in hand, but I have been to all 50 states. Let's see if we can get this thing working again. There we go. We're working again. So these are the countries I've been to so far. I'm including the United States because that puts it at an even 30. I actually am leaving next Thursday and going to Thailand and Cambodia. So I will be able to take the United States off of there. So some of the reasons, yeah. So some of the reasons I love travel photography is it's given me a greater and deeper understanding of the culture. When you're looking at it through a lens and really trying to document who they are as people, it really makes a difference in how much you understand them and makes you interact with them a lot more. I love interacting with the locals. When you have a camera, it's opened up so many doors and opportunities. I've been in places I could have never imagined because somebody said, come in, take photos of my home, hang out with me. And it's been one of the greatest joys is interacting with people. And a lot of times people, I don't speak the language, but we're all human. You find a way to communicate. The challenge of finding the next great shot, I'm always looking for what can I get next? How can I look at this differently? I really try before I go on a trip to not look at other photos from that location. I'll do a quick search to make sure I'm going to the right place, that kind of thing. But I don't like go through Google and look at all the images and just scroll through looking for, oh, I want it to be my own. I want it to be my own art. I want to be the creator. I don't want to feel like I'm just copying what somebody else has done. It's impossible not to be influenced by other people's work, but I really try and make it my own. Trying to capture something that's interesting and unique. I'm always looking for those little things that are unique about a location. When you start traveling, especially in a lot of developing countries, I've spent a lot of time in Africa and Asia. And when you're traveling in those countries, honestly, when you're just looking at the overall, it can start feeling very similar. You know, the buildings, the homes, the built out of sheet metal and plywood and cardboard and all of that, those start feeling the same. Just the lifestyle starts feeling the same. So you really have to dig in and see what makes them unique. And sometimes it's things, of course, like dress, food, language, but you really take the time. And when you're really trying to capture them with a camera, you take the time to do that. And I love that. Seeing popular places in a different way than everybody else. I love tourist spots. I know a lot of people like try and avoid them like the plague. I love them. I just try and find a different way to photograph them. And you'll see that here in a little bit. And then having a way to always remember. Obviously, I can look back on my travels over the years, and sometimes I'll be working on re-updating a blog post or something and be going through my photos again, and it just brings back all these amazing memories of, you know, some trip I went on in 2008 or whatever it was. So tonight, I'm going to talk about, so my talks, typically I talk about preparing for the trip. And we talk about the basics of photography, how all of that works, and just the basics of cameras and technologies, options in cameras, all of that, how to avoid theft on a trip, how to pack your stuff. I usually have all my gear out to show people this is what it looks like when I'm going on a trip. I'm skipping all that tonight for time's sake. So I usually do that. Then I talk about going on the trip itself, and then talk about coming back and how to share your images, how to have your images have impact when you get back. There's a lot of people that take great images, but because of how they share them, they don't have the impact they could have. And so I talk about that as well. So that's kind of my typical talk. So you guys are just getting this hour and a half portion of it that I thought probably applied to this group, because I know a lot of you have been taking photos for a lot of years, so I didn't want to start out with the basics. We're not going to talk about composition tonight. Again, it's kind of one of those basics, and I just wouldn't have time to go through that and talk about the other stuff. So what we are going to talk about is using visual elements to make your photos more creative, stand out, using captivating light, picking your subject matter, how you pick to tell the story, and then storytelling with your photos. So that's what we're going to be going over. So first, visual, easy, it's everywhere, is lines. You can use lines in so many ways to make your subject stand out, to draw attention to a subject. Obviously here, and I'll tell you where the photos are taken because that's what I get asked a lot. This is in Tunisia, North Africa. So a lot of times lines will draw your eye somewhere in the photo. In this case, the human form stands out off of the rigid lines, and it really makes him pop in the photo. Same here, just in a different direction. This was in Kenya. So I just love the use of line to make the subject stand out. Here, it's using lines to draw your eye through the photo. This is in Ghana, in Africa. Railroad tracks obviously are used a lot. I try not to use things that are really easy, but this photo had to be taken with this guy walking down in his overalls. And then lines, this one is taken in Tuscany in Italy. You just have lines going every kind of direction. But it gives the viewer, it keeps them kind of looking through the photo, makes it interesting. I'm not going to go into how exactly that works tonight for time's sake, but it does make it a more interesting photo to look at. Here I use the lines of the building on the right to draw your attention to my focal point, which is the cathedral. This is in Poland. And using, a lot of times you can use other structures, other trees, other rivers, roads, whatever it is, to draw attention to what you want the viewer to look at. So every time they start visually looking away, it pulls them back in. So just makes for good composition. Here, using lines to draw your eye up through the image. These are prayer flags in Nepal, in Kathmandu. And here, using lines to just draw, again, your eye through the image. And then you have these human forms that just really stand out. It makes them pop in the image because you have such solid lines. This is in France. This is Versailles. And if you have questions as I go, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to answer. Lines aren't always literal. Sometimes lines are just everything's kind of, those treetops are all pointing in the same direction, or just the flow of the image takes you in a certain direction. So lines aren't always literal. The examples I gave here were pretty literal, but they're not always literal. But lines can play a big role in making your photos more interesting. Shape is huge in photography. Just in art as a whole, when we are young, when we're little kids and we start learning how to draw and how to create things, we draw in simple shapes. You draw a house, you draw a triangle, you draw a square, you draw a door with a rectangle. It's simple shapes. That's how our minds work. So when you use that in your photography, it kind of takes us back to the basics and makes it really easy for the viewer to relate to the photo. So here, obviously, have a lot of lines going on, from rectangles, the circles on the bike tires, but shapes can play a big role in creating just comfort for the viewer, even though there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of colors, you have the stripes on the awning, but they're all very basic shapes. Here, I used the shape of the bowl. This was in China at a market. And the city's Hanzhong, it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no, like, if you run into another Caucasian there, you're lucky. But here, just the shape of the bowl creates visual interest. It puts an edge on the photo and makes it more interesting to look at. Here, this is in Rome, looking up, obviously circles, rectangles, or they're really trapezoids, I guess, but just very simple shapes. Here, again, simple shapes, just a bunch of rectangles. This was in Madrid, Spain, with the guy standing there. And people always ask, how do you get these shots where those people are perfectly standing in the middle of the doorway? And honestly, it's just being out there a lot. It's shooting a lot. It's missing a lot and getting the keeper. You don't show all the ones you missed, right? And we were in this plaza, turned around, this guy was standing dead center in the doorway, and I grabbed him. A lot of luck. Yep, that's for sure. So here, again, very simple shapes, but makes the viewer just comfortable, even though there's really a lot going on here with all the stone and different cracks and all that. This is in Tunisia. I was there right after the Arab Spring. So the Arab Spring, when they overthrew their dictator, had just been 6 months before. And so there was no tourist in the entire country. They loved having us there. I have never been so warmly welcomed to a country as I was in Tunisia, which is not, it was the first time I'd been in a primarily Muslim country, didn't know what to expect going in, and they were amazing. They were kind, brought us into their homes all the time and would feed us these amazing meals. And it was a really, really cool trip. But why I tell you all of that is these ruins normally are crawling with people, with tourists. Tunisia is a very popular place for Europeans to go on vacation, like we go down to Mexico. It's on the Mediterranean, so it's warmer, it gets further south. And so think going to Tulum or Chichen Itza, crawling with people, that's what you normally get here. But because there was nobody there, I had the ruins to myself to take photos, which was awesome. Again, shapes make us comfortable. So form is creating depth in your photos. So shooting it at angles to show depth, or we're taking a 3D world and putting it into 2D, right? We're flattening it. And so anything you can do to create shape, form, depth in your photo makes the viewer more comfortable. It gives them more information. It makes the photo more interesting to look at. This is in Havana, Cuba. I could have photographed this sculpture, this mosaic sculpture straight on, but by going just at a slight angle and getting the edge of the hat and the edge of the face, it shows that it has depth, right? That's what I mean when I say form. Buildings, don't photograph the building straight on. Go to the side, get the side of the building. This is a really good example. I'm not talking about composition tonight, but this is a really good example of rule of thirds in multiple ways. The building itself is at a third as far as where it sits in the overall picture, at the bottom left third. Then I also shoot the building to where I have it, the face of it, the sunlit area is 2/3, and then the shadowed area is 1/3. And so whenever you're doing those repeating thirds, again, it makes the viewer that much more comfortable. And a lot of times with the viewer, what we're talking about is subconscious. They couldn't look at it and say, oh, that's why I like that photo. But you start showing your photos enough and you start seeing why people respond to certain things. And things like that definitely help. So this is a statue in Paris, obviously a lot of depth here with the way the sunlight's hitting it, but it just creates a lot of form. Here it is with a human. This was in Kenya. This is one of probably one of my favorite photos I've ever taken, just because he was very old and had cataracts. And so the way the light's hitting his face and putting the black on one side, that you get the black with the white eye, kind of the milky white eye, and then the sunlight hitting him on the other side. But the reason I show this photo is because of the shape it creates on his face. So when I'm creating these photos, I'm actually slightly posing people. And what I mean by that, I'm not telling them stand here, face here, that sort of thing, but I will move. So when I have somebody like this, I didn't speak his language, I will slowly move and they'll follow me with their eyes and their body a lot of times, and I'll get the lighting and the angle I want. Whereas a lot of times what people do in this situation is they're like, oh, they're there, I'm just gonna photograph it. I actually take the time to pay attention to where the light's hitting them and what's going on behind them as well. A lot of times what's going on behind them is distracting, and I'll get rid of that distraction by moving and placing them where I want, and they don't even know it's happening. I can't obviously move people a lot in those situations, and I'll show you a photo here in a little bit where I do move somebody quite a bit. But again, remember you're turning a 3D world into a 2D image. So as much as you can show shape and depth with shadow and light and your angles, the better your photos will be. Pattern's really big for making people comfortable. You can use pattern in all kinds of ways. These are ping pong tables in China. This was at a university. One of the coolest things I had the opportunity to do was speak about photography. I gave a presentation at a Chinese university, so that was fun. But this was out in their, like, I don't know, outdoor rec area. Here, really simple patterns. These are trees in Versailles. Just really simple, easy to look at, would make great artwork on a wall somewhere. Here, I use the thatched, this is actually a thatched hut, a home behind her. And I use that again to separate her, a lot like I talked about using the lines. So it separates her because you have that repeating pattern going on. So she really stands out. Patterns should add and not distract. There are times that patterns can get in the way, and you have to be really careful about that. And a lot of it's a judgment call in the moment as you're shooting, but there can be times that patterns are totally distracting. And then there's times that it makes your shot. So it's really a judgment call and depends on what you're attracted to. One thing I'm really big on is if my eye goes to it, there's usually a reason for it. And usually that's a good thing. Usually my eye is attracted to the pattern in that clothing or in that building or the light there or whatever it is. So when I'm traveling and taking photos, I'm always looking for where's my eye going and why. And sometimes it's going there because there's just so much going on and then you just move on. So texture is a really big part of using things to make people comfortable with the photos, make them feel the photos. These are pineapples for sale in Cuba. Obviously, lots of textures going on here, from the pineapples to the cardboard to the wall in the background. But textures can feel a lot of different ways. It can separate things. Like here, if you look at this photo big, this is a salmon in Alaska that I just saw the bones on the beach. And you obviously have the rocks, but if you look at this big, you get like the granular sands on the bones. There's just so much texture going on here. You can almost feel it. Like you can feel, if you were to touch those bones, what it would feel like. Obviously sand, just capturing the texture. Again, if you see this big, you can see the individual grains of sand in this photo. Here, just almost contrasting textures. This was taken in Utah, in Arches National Park. But I just love just the kind of contrasting textures, the hardness of the rock, the softness of the clouds. Here, this is in Istanbul, Turkey. This is taffy that was being sold on the side of the street. they like wrap it on these sticks and then squeeze lemon over it. And that's one of their treats. That's like one of their street foods. But you can almost taste that taffy because of that texture. So texture actually can elicit from the viewer touch, sound, smell, and even taste. So texture can be it's one of the most powerful aspects of photography and one of the least used. So look for textures and things so that when somebody sees that, they can like smell, that apple pie kind of thing. Texture can go a long ways to do that. Color. So obviously the last photo had a lot of color, but color is one of the biggest things that just automatically draws people's attention. You can use color really, really powerfully in your photography to draw people's attention to things. These are dyes for sale outside of a Hindu temple in Nepal. This is in Cuba. This is a good example of not getting it the first time. I saw this car sitting in front of these cool buildings, took a shot, and then I kept walking and I kind of looked over again and saw how perfectly centered this car was with the different colors of the building behind it. But the color is what makes this photo for me. So this is a gypsy girl in India, and this is one of the luckiest shots I ever got. Back to your luck. So I was taking a picture of her. Obviously, she's smiling at me. And just as I went to take her picture, a bus drove by on the road behind her. So the colors of the vehicle behind is just a bus going by, and it matches her clothing perfectly. Like I couldn't have planned that any better. And so sometimes you just get lucky. But color plays a big role in that photo for sure. This is the Casa Azul, which was Frida's house in Mexico City. And we were in the area. I was down there photographing Dia de los Muertos, saw this girl walking by who obviously was painted and had this beautiful, colorful dress on. And so she was walking with her parents. So I asked her parents if I could take her photo in front of the house. But obviously, color plays a big role there. This is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken because I had to work really hard to get it. And one of the things I get asked a lot is photographing people. What do you do? What's your limits? All that. Street type of photography, me photographing people doing what they're doing, living life. I just do that. If they see me and they ask, or I'll even approach them and show them a photo. I want whoever I photograph to be totally comfortable with the fact that I'm taking their picture. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm taking advantage of them. And so any of the portraits you see, I'm asking them to take their picture. I'm not just taking it. Every time I'm asking them. It's really simple when you don't speak the language. It's actually easier when you don't speak the language because you just point at the camera and point at them and you get a yes or no. It's one or the other. You got to make sure you know what it is. Some countries, this is a no. So you got to make sure. A lot of women will just kind of cover their face and turn away. And I won't photograph them. And I've had people I photographed that have asked me to delete the image after. I've only had that happen a couple times and I deleted it right then and there in front of them. I don't want them to feel like I'm taking advantage.
Corey,
Yeah.
one of our people on Zoom just posted a question. What focal length lens do you use most commonly in street photography?
Yeah, I usually have an 80 to 200 on because I like being able to get in tight if I see a tighter composition. But I also like for portraits to be at that 80 to 100 range. If I know I'm doing a portrait, I'm usually at 85 or 110, and I like shooting with a fixed length lens for that. Yep. So this one, and I'll tell you the story behind this one because it's kind of interesting and it shows you how I worked to get a photo. So we were at this school. This is in North Kenya. We're 13 hours from Nairobi in the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. and saw this woman, and her eyes were just stunning. And she had this screen on, and there was this blue door at the entrance to the school. We were doing a medical clinic there. And she was there. She had brought her mother, her elderly mother, to the medical clinic. I asked her if I could take her photo just by pointing at her, pointing at the camera kind of thing. And she said no. I'm like, okay. And then we had a translator there. So a little while later, like 10, 15 minutes later, I'm like, hey, do you mind asking her if I can take her photo? And he asked her. She said, no, I'm not interested. She wasn't like mean about it. She just wasn't interested. And then at one point, I asked her, her mom, can I take your photo? And her mom's like, yeah. She was happy to have her photo taken. So I took her photo. And then I asked her, do you want a photo with your mom? And she's like, sure. And so, I mean, and without the language, but essentially, sure. So I took a photo of her and her mom together. And then I'm like, okay, now, and I showed it to her and she smiled. And so I'm like, okay, now just you? And she's like, okay. She gave me, nodded yes. And I'm like, okay, let's go over here. And so I kind of, took her over to this door and got the perfect lighting that I wanted, the angle I wanted, and that door. So I had to work hard for this one. Usually I don't work that hard.
This and of the Afghan girl, famous, I think it was Steve
Yeah.
McCory,
Yeah.
Afghan girl.
Thank you. That's a very nice compliment. So obviously just more color. This is in Italy off the coast of Venice, the island of, I get them confused. There's Murano and Burano. One is all about lace and one is blown glass, and they have all the lace one is the one with the colors. I believe it's Murano. So obviously, one of my favorite things to photograph is just markets. Markets can play such a big role in capturing the culture and what I've seen some of the craziest things in markets around the world. But one of the things I love about markets is just all the color. Color really can draw your eye to something in the photo. This is in Paris. This guy's just walking in the rain, and obviously the red umbrella. And then if you look closely, there's red flowers on the wall there in the vines, and just complements the red of the umbrella. This was the most amazing sunset I've ever seen. The camera could not capture what was here. This was in Costa Rica. But just again, when you have gorgeous colors, so color will just make people ooh and ah right away, which is why we love sunrises and sunsets, right? So color grabs people's attention quicker than anything else. Next is tone. Tone is what you use a lot of times to set a mood. It's honestly one of the hardest things to capture in your photography is tone. So this is really soft. Obviously DIA photographed at sunset or sunrise, sorry. This was about 5:30 in the morning one day. But just really soft. It sets just this peaceful kind of feel to it. And then you have photos like this that have much higher contrast, just has a totally different feel, still a sunrise photo, but totally different feel because of the amount of contrast there on the Golden Gate Bridge. And then obviously here, tone of the contrast, just that sharpness and edginess to it, gives it a lot of energy. The angle plays a big role in giving this a lot of energy as well. Black and white, I love black and white. I've been doing a fine art series for many years now of architecture and landscapes that's all black and white photography. But the contrast here with the clouds and the shadows they're throwing, this is in Big Bend National Park in Texas. One of the biggest surprises of my life was photographing that national park and seeing how amazing the mountains were there. And I saw all kinds of black bears, and not what I expected on the border of Texas and Mexico. So this is very similar, except it sets that softer tone. It's more peaceful, sets a mood. This is in Valencia, Spain. So I struggle the most with using tone to set a mood. I know photographers that will do a photo series, like do a whole trip and use tone. and it just has this peaceful feeling. A lot of the photo stories we see from famous photographers they'll all feel really edgy to them. A lot of that's in your tone, or they'll feel really soft and peaceful. So negative space. I love using negative space. I'm really big on not having space in my photos that doesn't need to be there. I try and shoot to where I don't have to crop at all. I try and get it in camera every time. Doesn't mean I don't have to crop here and there, or I'm missing something on the edge and want to get it out, or want to get it just perfectly where I want it in the photo. But it's more rare that I crop than I not crop. But I also love using negative space to draw your eye right to the subject and to just be creative. So here, this is just a seabird flying off the coast of Maine. Here, got gondolas. You can't, it's hard to see here, but there's a bird flying right over here. Does not show on the screen. Huh. So I can't point at, but there's a bird in there, I promise. But I love using the negative space here. This is the boardwalk in Santa Cruz in California. Here, just using the negative space of the sky, but using the trees and the mountains to frame it. This is just outside of Crested Butte. This is the Ruby Range outside of Crested Butte. So here, putting him off to the side, you have all this white. This is really soft in tone, just a good example of tone. But using all that white space off to the right of him just sets him off. And I love putting things off to the side or in the top or in the bottom of my photos. Most people, if you just hand them a camera, will center things every time if they don't know what they're doing. And one of the best ways to separate yourself from a person with their phone or that's just handed a camera is to be more creative with your composition and set things off. So obviously his head's right at a third, the top left third there. This is using it in a totally different way. The dark space, this is Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska. I'm on a trek right now to try and go to all the national parks. So I've been to 40 of them so far. So I'm getting there. I think I'm going to go to Death Valley here because I think they're going to have a super bloom this spring, which happens about every 10 years. So hoping to go there later in March. Space is one of the most powerful and least used tools because what it does is it draws your eye to where you want the viewer to look in the photo. Like this, having that ridge of trees draws your eye right to those mountain peaks. They just pop off of there. Imagine if that wasn't there and all you had was the rest of the mountain down below, those peaks would not pop the same way. All right, so using available light. I love available light. I'm always looking for the light. I think light is the most important thing to separate your photos from everything else and what most people are taking. So I'm always looking for good light. This is in Myanmar, a young Buddhist monk. He was walking through and he was in the light. I think I took a shot of him walking and then he stopped for some reason and looked back. And it was late in the day. The sun was really low. This is a temple. It was coming into the temple. And so that's how I got this shot. So this is an example of waiting for the light. This isn't high contrast light really. This is in Spain, in Segovia, Spain. And there's a castle there. And my wife and I were there on vacation. We were on top of the castle. And you could look out literally over the plains of Spain. You could look out and see forever. And I could see this, it was a cloudy, rainy day, but I could see this one spot of light just going across the plain. It was slowly coming towards us and towards the town. And so my wife, I'm like, do you mind if we wait a few more minutes? And she started reading a book. It ended up being 45 minutes later that light got there and it hit the cathedral perfectly. But there's a big difference between that cathedral being hit by some sunlight on that face on the right side as opposed to just the whole thing being in shadow. So light can make your photos much more interesting. So this is at a tobacco farm. This was a farmer that was showing us that we were in his tobacco barn and he was rolling cigars and showing us how he rolls his cigars and stuff, and just using the available light there, just coming in through the windows of the barn. So here you can use light in all kinds of different ways. Obviously, this is near sunset. It's still pretty bright when I'm taking this photo, but I'm underexposing it substantially to get this shot, just to create that drama. This one would not feel the same with the light. This is in a temple in Hong Kong, and the smoke, these are, this is incense that they light, and those are prayers hanging from it. So the idea is the incense, the smoke goes up and sends the prayers to the gods. And so the light coming in from behind makes that smoke really stand out, you can see the brighter spots on the red prayer tags hanging there. Light really makes this shot. So this is the best portrait studio I've ever had. This is in Kenya, and it was an old building. I think it was used as a church at one point, but you can see what the walls look like. It hadn't been used much. We were doing medical clinics there. And over my back shoulders on both sides were two big windows, just open air. And then on across behind them, there were two more windows. So I got this great rim light on both sides of them, and then light coming from over my shoulders. It's like I had set up soft boxes and had set up my lighting for the day, and you got great catch lights in their eyes. And light made these shots. I shot probably 40, 50 people here that day. They were really friendly. The guy on the left there is actually a tribal warrior. He has a machete in his hand that you can't see. And they literally, I mean, they have scars. They're fighting to protect their cattle because they're so poor. A lot of times when they're in drought, the only way they get something to drink is they bleed their camels to get moisture and drink the blood. That's how dry it is there. But he's there. He's one of the guys that protects their camels and the cattle that the tribe has from other tribes. And they battle on a fairly regular basis from my understanding. So here is using light in a totally different way. Typically you would just say, okay, this is overexposed and blown out, right? But I did that on purpose to capture that shape. This is in India. This is in Mumbai. And so, no, this was New Delhi. But I'm capturing that shape, which is a big part of the architecture there. And then your eye goes right to that bright spot. But then I got this guy down there sitting in kind of this weird, very Indian pose. We would never see an American sitting like that, at least not a 70-year-old American sitting like that. Very Indian yoga kind of pose. But what it does is it makes it more interesting because your eye goes to that, and then it's almost like an Easter egg kind of thing that you find him in the bottom left corner. Here, this is just outside the building we were staying in Costa Rica. I try and throw in some stuff like this just to show you can use available light in many different ways, and it was just the sunlight hitting. It's the back of the building we were staying in behind it, but I just underexposed that so you can't tell what's going on, and makes this flower really pop. Using light in a totally different way. Obviously, using it as a silhouette. This is in Hong Kong. Obviously, lines play a big part in this photo too. So I'll see something like this where I see this ray of light coming through the houses, and I'll stand somewhere sometimes for 15, 20 minutes just waiting for something to happen. And in this case, a woman rode through with her umbrella on her bike. This was in China as well. And so I'll find places and then just wait to get the shot that I want and hope you get it. Sometimes I don't. This was a woman in Tunisia. This is the photo I'm proudest of because of the story behind it. I won't go into details, but basically a guy I met took me to photograph his grandmother who was on her deathbed, and they had never had a photo of her. In Tunisia, people literally, the only photos they had of themselves were on their cell phone. I had a small dye sub printer with me on this trip, and at one point I photographed this young guy on the side of a building, and he had the Tunisian flag on a t-shirt, and I asked him if he wanted the photo, and he's like, yeah. And so I printed this, just a 4x6 print. Before I knew it, I had a line of about 50 men, all middle-aged men from the age of 30 to 60 years old, lined up to get their photo because none of them had a print of themselves. The guy that we met and that kind of was showing us around when we first got to Tunisia, he had one photo of himself, and they had it tucked in their mirror in their front of their home. So they just didn't have it. This was about 12 years ago now, 12, 15 years ago. And so the guy didn't have a photo of his grandmother. We came into this small room. It's just this small building that she's in. She's laying on the bed. He helps her sit up, and he starts talking to her, and they both start crying. And he's like, she said, you can take her photo. And this is the photo I got. This is the one time that I made a point of figuring out the guy's contact information, and I sent him an 8x10 of this photo. So he has this print of his grandmother. And she was like in her final weeks, months kind of thing. So if you want to know where the sun will be for lighting, I use the Sunseeker app. There's a bunch of them out there, but that one's worked really well for me. I love how I can just point it up at the sky and see where the sun's going to be at different times of the day. All right, so I don't use flash a lot when I travel, but I do use it when I need it. This is in Bolivia. This is Carnival, which in Bolivia is it's like a mix between Brazilian Carnival, but more indigenous, like native culture and Indian. We were in a town we were at about 14,000 feet, I believe, is where all these parades were, and they go on for days. So this is at night, obviously, and so use flash. I love dragging my shutter when I'm using flash to create a sense of movement, and that's what I'm doing here. So this is in China. This was just a worker walking by. And so there was this pagoda in the background. I had already photographed the pagoda. It actually hung in my living room, just a photo of the pagoda for many years. I love the pagoda. But he walked by, and I saw that I could get a shot with the pagoda in the background. So I was like, stopped him and pointed at my camera. But if I hadn't used a flash here, there was enough sunlight that it would just cast a shadow into his eyes. So I use a fill light. I really try when I use flash to make it to where an uneducated viewer would have no idea I use flash, and an educated photographer will question it. Like, did he use flash or didn't he? I don't want it to look like I use flash unless I'm going for drama like in this one, right? But on a daylight kind of photo, I don't want people to know that I use flash. So this is streets in China, and I was trying to capture the younger vibe of teens and 20-year-olds being out at night, because there's actually a pretty thriving night scene, and so used a flash for this portrait. So when I shoot flash, just a little tip is I usually shoot at least one stop underexposed. A lot of times people use TTL, let the flash go. It almost always overexposes it, in my opinion. If you get a good exposure and underexposure flash, anywhere from 1 to 3 stops, depending on the situation, you can get a really great portrait with flash.
Sorry, another question just
Yeah.
popped up. chat, are you using camera mounted flash or handheld or off camera?
In these cases, I'm using camera mounted because I don't want to deal with this, with holding it out. When I'm shooting using flash in most, well, let's use a wedding, for example, it's almost always camera mounted, unless I'm doing like portraits of the bride and groom where I want that off camera and want to create drama and stuff. So yeah, but my trick is to get the proper exposure as if I'm not using flash. Then I just pop a little flash in there to fill in those shadows, catch lights in the eyes. That's all it takes. So I say 1 stop under is the safest way. I'm usually shooting 2 to 2.5 stops under on my flash to get what I want. Because the exposure is correct for the scene and getting what I want in the first place. So the flash is just a little extra pop. All right, so I love shooting at dusk and at night. Obviously, you guys know where this is. When you're shooting at dusk and night, you only have a very small window of time to get it exactly right. Usually about 3 minutes is kind of my rule of thumb. If you go too early, the sky doesn't have this deep blue, sometimes purplish color to it. If you go too late, you overexpose the lights in the photo. So like the lights on the Eiffel Tower here, or the lights on the bridge, you can see there's details in the highlight areas of the bridge even. And so to get that proper balance and exposure, you really have about 3 minutes, and it changes from where you are in the world to the time of year, all kinds of things. So there's not any set trick except to show up early. I always show up usually a half hour to an hour early when I know I want a shot. Like I saw this during the daytime when I was just wandering around Paris. And so I knew I wanted to go back there to get the night shot. And I'll go there a half hour and just wait for set up my location, tripod, and I'm just sitting there waiting for the moment, basically.
Can I interrupt with one more quick flash related question?
Sure.
Right as you went to the slide.
Yeah.
He's asking, when you do through the lens metering, are you using exposure compensation or some other form to drop down 1 or 2 stops?
Yeah, so it's on the flash itself. So I'm using a speed light, and on the flash itself, I'm underexposing. So does that make sense? Does that answer? Okay. Yeah. All right, so this was at night. This is without a flash. This is just using a street light that was there, and she just happened to be bathed in it. So I got this one without a flash. So a lot of times the reason I show this photo is you can use lights that are around in the area to light your subject too. You don't always have to use your own light. So obviously this is balanced, the Colosseum in Rome, to get just all the light to where nothing's overexposed. I work really hard to make sure that nothing in my photo is blown out. I don't want there to be a real hot spot that everybody's eye goes to when I'm wanting them to look at the beautiful blue sky and the shape and details of the building. So Union Station, obviously, played around with the composition and used a lot of negative space here. But to get neon at the right time, you have a very small window. As if you've tried it, you know. So another one with neon at the right time in Portland. I love using traffic, people, to give scale and just to create lines and visual interest. And I love, a lot of times people try and shoot things without anything in it. And a lot of times I'm looking for what can I add to the photo? What can I put in the foreground to make it more interesting? Here it's just obviously long exposure with traffic going by. So 3 to 5 minutes max for perfect balance. Now you can fake it a lot these days in post and editing, but I'm old school in the sense that I like getting it in the camera. It makes me feel better about myself. Yeah.
You get that without the sign, the neon glowing out.
Yeah, so it's shot probably at f/22. So my aperture is very closed, and then it's a long, like a second long exposure. So that's how I got, so I'm exposing for the sign, first of all. So I'm figuring out what's that proper balance to get the proper exposure on the sign. And then I'm waiting for the sky to get where I want. And cars just kept going by. Like every time a stoplight would release, cars would go by. So I'm getting all those, the top elements in the photo accurate and making sure that there's no blown out windows in the building, things like that. And then I just wait for the cars to go by and snap my photo. And again, I probably had about a 2-minute window, 3-minute window at the most to get the shot, but that's how I do it. That's the process that I go through mentally. All right. So I love angles to make photos more interesting. This is a field of poppies in Tunisia, getting down low, shooting below the poppies. I'll show you another photo here in a second where it's a totally different angle of this poppy field, but always look for ways to get above or below things to make them more interesting. One of the biggest things with little kids, if you're ever shooting kids, get down on their level. Don't just shoot down at them. It makes them more human, and the viewer will interact with your photo of them a lot more if you're down on their level. Obviously, just the Eiffel Tower, getting up close, looking up at it, just trying to look at it differently than everything else I'd seen. This is looking up at the top, that pagoda that was in the background of the guy that I was talking about, Flash, in China. This is the inside of that pagoda. So this is in Rome again, the Pantheon in Rome. And just shooting up like this rather than just shooting straight just creates all these converging lines and just makes it more interesting to look at. Sometimes I try and take what's just there, and instead of just taking a documentary photo that I feel like anybody could take, I'm like, okay, how can I make this different? And angles can play a big role in that. So shooting down on her. So the reason I shot down on this girl is because of her eyelashes. They're feathers that are attached to her eyelashes, and I wanted to feature that. So that's why I shot down on her, because that's what's essentially in the foreground of the image, is her eyelashes. These are temples in Myanmar. And so I'm up on another temple shooting out over them. So by getting up higher gives me a totally different perspective. So here I got down on his level and obviously got a big camel there. This is in India. And by getting down on his level, it exaggerated the height and size of the camel, made the little boy feel more human. The guy in the background in the checkered shirt is his father, and he asked me to take the photo. He saw me walking by taking photos, and he grabbed his son and he grabbed his camel and like pointed at him like, will you take his photo? And that's what I got. So the one thing with angles though is you don't want it to be too disorienting. You don't want people to look at it and feel confused. The worst angle is a 45-degree angle. Like if you just put it right on its side at 45, people are like, is it up? Is it over? Like what's happening? You don't want people to be disoriented and feel confused when they're looking at the photo. All right, so shooting tips. These are my big ones. Shoot with intention. Every time I click the shutter, I know why I'm clicking it, what's in my frame, what I'm trying to capture, the light, my focal point, my composition, what elements the visual elements I'm using. I try never to click the shutter, just hoping that it turns out, or hoping that I get a good shot, or click it a bunch of times in a row with slight differences. I really try and be intentional each time. I'll come back from a trip, a 2-week trip across the world. I'll come back and I've taken 1,200 photos. I don't take 10,000 photos and come back and go through them and pick out the ones I really like. I really try and shoot with intention. I learned that from studying Ansel Adams, honestly, because he would go out with his 8x10 and go out all day and take 3 photos and be hiking up and down the mountains of Yosemite for the entire day. And so I really try and apply that to what I do. When I shoot like an event for a client, I'll have a lot of times, like last week, we had 2 events going on. So I had 7 of us shooting at the same time. I was one of the photographers, and everybody that was shooting for me shot twice as many photos as I shot. But I actually provided more photos to the client than they did, because my photos had intention, they had purpose, and they were solid photos. So I really try and train my photographers to always shoot with intention. Digital's made people really lazy when it comes to that, but it'll make you a better photographer. Look for unique light, angles, subjects, whatever captures your eye. Look for things that grab your eye. It's interesting when I'm photographing people, like even at a corporate event, I'm photographing a room full of 200 people. My eyes will keep going to the same people every time. And it's usually, they look happy, they look peaceful, they look glad to be there. Their clothes might attract you, their hair, whatever it is, what's your eye drawn to, capture that. It's usually, it'll turn into a good photo. Sorry, I skipped one there. Shoot tighter more than loose. So I love using negative space, but if you're like debating, you don't have a purpose for the negative space, like creatively, then shoot tight. When you shoot tighter, you get rid of distractions. So many people, the reason their photos don't pop is because they see something that caught their eye, but then they photograph the whole scene. And the whole scene with all the things going on is distracting. So focus in on what you want people to look at. Get proper exposure. That's a no-brainer, but people are lazy a lot and think they'll fix it later. Get proper white balance. If I can, I'll set my white balance to manual if I know exactly what I want, or I'm in a, say in a temple, like I'm going to be photographing Angkor Wat in a couple weeks here in Cambodia. When I'm inside that temple, I'll set my white balance so it's just spot on in the camera. And when I come home, I'm not like, well, was that wall more gray or brown? Like I know because I got it on location. Because I'm not walking around photographing a gray card or anything like that. But on location, my eye can tell me better than anything else. Shoot raw if possible. Raw just gives you a lot more wiggle room in your editing. I used to shoot all JPEG and make my photographers shoot JPEG because I knew it made them better photographers because they couldn't make mistakes. Because if they made a mistake, the photo wouldn't turn out. And so I knew it made them better photographers, but there's just a lot more risk when you're shooting JPEG. The photos, honestly, you can blow a JPEG up as big as a RAW if it's a solid capture. So you'll always create better photos if you shoot it in camera the way you want the photo to come out. I promise. I get people that argue with me on that. Like, well, if I take more, I'm bound to get a good one in there. But I promise you'll be a better photographer. All right, so we're going to talk through subjects here for the next 15 minutes and a little bit of storytelling. So people, I love people. I explained how I photograph people. Don't be intimidated by people when you're traveling. Approach them. You'll get plenty of no's, but you'll get a lot of yeses, and the yeses are worth it. This is a gypsy woman in India. I love her smile. She was so happy to have me take her photo. So many people see it as an honor that you chose them. We think we're bugging them, we're annoying them with a camera in their face, but so many times they're just happy to have that human interaction and that you chose them out of the street of 100 other people walking by or whatever it is. So Most of the time, yeah. I learned that in Nepal. I photographed a boy and his father who were walking around with wool and they were mending clothing. They just had a bag of wool and like this loom thing, and they walked around like blew a whistle. And I stopped them and took their photo, and the father was actually very unfriendly to me. The little boy wanted his photo taken, but the father was, I could tell he was not happy. And so I showed him the photo of the boy, and this was the first time I'd used digital. I started shooting years ago in film. This is the first trip where I'd used digital, and I showed him the photo of his son, and he lit up. And then he wanted me to take a bunch of photos of him. And so I learned the power of that, making people comfortable. And a lot of times it's not that first image that's your best one. It's the second one you take. Because that first one, sometimes they're still a little questioning. You show them, and then they're like, oh, I look good. And then they warm up to you and you get the best shot. The other thing is, in most areas of the world, other than Western culture, so US, Canada, Europe, most people don't smile for photos. When you put a camera on them, they get serious. So I actually usually have to work with people to get them to smile. I play peekaboo with adults all the time. I'd literally just like put the camera down, put it up, put it down, put it up until they start laughing, and then I'll get the shot. Now, if they weren't laughing when I saw them originally, I'm not going to make them laugh. What I saw in them is what I want to capture. So if that was a big smile because they're laughing with a friend, or they just smiled at me as I was walking by, then I'll capture them smiling. But if they're serious, I'll let them just be serious. I want to capture who they are as a person. So I'm not trying to manipulate what they're doing. But in other cultures, they just don't smile for photos. So these women were sitting at a temple. This is in India. I love creating depth. So your eye automatically goes to the woman on the right because she's in the foreground. And then you get this sense of friendship between the two of them. They were just sitting there talking when I went by. And so I captured both of them because it tells more of a story about them and their relationship. This is my Cuban cowboy. This is in Havana. This is in Tunisia, just an old lady. She was just sitting on her stoop on her home and had the cat sitting next to her and her cane. I couldn't have posed a better photo. If you art directed this, you wouldn't have gotten this photo. I have photos of her really close up too, where you literally see the hair coming out of her warts kind of thing. And I love the photo. It's a great photo, but there's just something about the cat and the cane that I love. So that's the photo I show. So I capture people in action a lot. I usually have my subjects going into the frame. It's stronger compositionally, theoretically, but I also love breaking rules. I love breaking the rule of thirds at times. I love using juxtaposition like this with her walking out. Honestly, the reason though that she's walking out of the frame and not into the frame is if I'd panned the camera to the left, there was a bunch of graffiti on the wall there that I didn't want to show. And I balanced her with the window and instead of the graffiti. So this is just more street photography, capturing people doing what they do, how they live their life every day. This is in Bolivia. So my biggest skill as a photographer isn't my knowledge of photography. It isn't my creativity as an artist. I can teach people how to use a camera. I can teach them composition, all that stuff. A genuine smile goes further than anything else. And that's whatever you're shooting. When I was shooting architecture, I'd shoot in hospitals in the middle of the night. And when that nurse is walking by and you just smile and say, hey, how's your night going? Next time they walk by, they're like, hey, I'm not in your shot, am I? Like they want to help you out because you're kind to them, because you smile, because they feel like you are genuine. I really try and have genuine empathy for my subjects as well that I'm shooting, so that they know that I'm taking the photo because I care about them. I've done obviously a lot of aid photography. I've photographed everything from medical clinics to orphanages where all the kids are sleeping on the floor, on these tile floors. I photographed well repair and all kinds of stuff over the years. But I really think that what makes my photos stand out is the fact that they know that I genuinely care about them and I have their best interest at heart. And a genuine smile goes further than anything else to show them that. So landscapes are a big part of capturing a culture and an area. This is in Iceland. This is in the fall in Iceland. I was there for a short time for this trip. I just went back last year and did 10 days and did the ring road with my son. We got a camper van and camped the whole time, and it was amazing. I love Iceland. This is that same field of poppies in Tunisia, just a totally different perspective of it. This is a good example of why you can make good use of a drone. This is a drone shot. This is a beaver pond. It's really ugly when you drive by. And I actually was flying my drone up to get the fall colors. And as I was flying it back, I'm watching on the screen and saw this reflection on this pond. You could never get this without a drone. You'd have movement in the water. It'd be impossible to get because the drone's up over the middle of the pond. So clouds play a huge role in good landscapes. Always look for good clouds. Blank blue sky might be nice, but for photos, clouds make the photo. Obviously, there's been a million photos of Yosemite Valley, but those thunderheads just really make it pop. So, all right, cityscapes are a big part. Travel photography too. Obviously, downtown Denver here, 16th Street Mall before it was a mess. This is in the Disney Concert Hall in LA. I will wait. There were cars going by, people walking by on the sidewalk the whole time. And I waited and got lucky, and this woman in this long black coat walked by. And I waited for her to get where I wanted her in the photo. One thing you'll notice in my photos too is people's legs are always separated. And so I wait for them to take that step so they don't look like they just have one leg. This is Portland at night. So this is Poland. I love the pigeon. It just, again, gives you more visual interest in the photo rather than just a row of houses. I didn't have good clouds to work with that day, so use something else. I stood in the same spot for 4 hours to get this photo. This is Hong Kong. The night before, a typhoon had blown in. I had no idea there was going to be a typhoon because I wasn't really watching the local weather reports. And my windows were rattling in the hotel I was staying in. I'm like, what is going on? Woke up the next morning and Hong Kong, if you've been there, is crazy smoggy, like really bad. And it was perfectly crystal clear. So I went up to Victoria Hill overlooking the city, and I started during daylight, and I stood in the same spot for 4 hours and just watched the city go from daylight to dusk. I had to go to the bathroom so bad about halfway through, but I wasn't giving up my spot because I had the prime location for the photo. And I have a dusk shot of this hanging up in my home. So I love using people, birds, things like that to create more visual interest, to give a sense of life and what's going on, a sense of scale. This is in Poland. So I'll quickly go through tourist spots here. So this is not my photo. This is the Trevi Fountain in Rome. This is what it typically looks like. People all over the place. This is my photo of Trevi Fountain. I was there at like 5:30 in the morning. So a lot of times I'm getting up really early or staying up late to go to tourist spots to avoid the crowds and get the shot I want. Sometimes you use the people. Grand Central Station, New York, people coming, going, bustling, plays a huge role. Obviously set up a tripod, did a long exposure to get that sense of movement and people coming and going. Here, Brooklyn Bridge, I could not get Brooklyn Bridge that day without people on it. They were coming and going. So I just waited for a couple walking by holding hands, and I just happened to have a couple walking by holding hands coming towards me too. So sometimes you get lucky. So busy day at the Lincoln Memorial in DC. This woman, for some reason, kind of stepped out of the crowd and walked right up to look up at Lincoln. She's wearing a red shirt. Color plays a huge role in this. But getting her alone, it gives you a sense of the scale, the sense of awe that she has looking up at the statue. This is in the National Gallery in DC. I waited about 15 minutes to get this photo. I just saw these clean lines and loved them, and people were going, that's an escalator that she's on. People are coming down, up and down the escalator the whole time. And then I saw her coming, and you're just praying somebody else doesn't jump on the escalator. Because I won't Photoshop somebody out, that kind of thing. I want it to be authentic. I'd rather wait and know that I got the shot. So obviously, if anybody has been to the Louvre, you got the Mona Lisa, you got all these people with their phones taking pictures. I'm like, how do I just gonna be another one of them if I'm just taking a picture of the Mona Lisa. How do I get this different? And so I stood centered on it and then just waited for somebody to put up their camera, and got really lucky that they had nice hands, that they had a red frame on their phone. Sometimes you just get lucky. So another view of the Lincoln Memorial. This is just going a different place. There's literally like 100 people right down just outside in the bottom left of that shot looking at the memorial. But by going, there actually, there's like two areas off the side. And by going there and just trying to get a different perspective, I'm able to make it feel like it's a quiet, peaceful day there. This is in Iceland, big waterfall. There are about 30 people just around that green bank right there. And so I'll use objects, natural objects, things like that to crop people out all the time. I use people too to crop things out, like a stop sign in the background. I'll slightly bend down just a little bit to where their head's blocking that stop sign, that sort of thing, so it's not a distraction. So look for foreground objects to block. And then a big part of photography that most people miss is the details, because that adds variety and it makes people feel like they're there. They can sense it and feel it. This is just a waterfall in Yosemite. I also am really big on using text, signage, language things to place people in where they are. So this is in obviously in Barcelona, poster for bullfighting in Spanish. And as soon as you see this photo, you know where you are. Just gift shop. Just captures a sense of what it's like around the Eiffel Tower. I'm trying to tell the story all the time, whether it's good or bad. The wall, the memorial in DC, people walking by. I could just step back and photograph people walking by, but it honestly felt pretty boring to me. And so I saw this rose and got a detail shot. Pomegranates in Istanbul. This is just at a street market in Paris, but by photographing the magazine with Notre Dame on the front and the Paris, just the text places you right where you are. This one's in DC, it was like at a booth in one of the metro stations that somebody was selling all these bobbleheads and stuff, but I love this shot. I just think it's fun. Rum for sale in Havana. Wooden Buddhas for sale in Myanmar. Old poster on the wall in a building in Havana. Detail of a fountain in Versailles. Just in China, you see red a lot of places. Red is dominant there. And so this just captured that feel, and it's just taped up with old tape. I have no idea what it says. So look for objects in the local language. All right, I am going to stop there. I'll be honest, I've never done an hour and a half talk before, so I wasn't quite sure how much I could squeeze into an hour and a half for you. So normally, kind of next step, I would go into the storytelling aspect, how to pull all this together to tell a story. If you guys are interested at all, I'm going to quickly scroll through here, give you a little preview of storytelling. Make your photos elicit a response. That's the number one thing to make people respond. They see it and they're awed. They think it's beautiful. They think it's funny. They think it's sad, whatever it is. Think like a book. Just some more storytelling photos, other things to consider, and there. So I put that on there. If you want to stay in touch, I have a newsletter. You can, if you do the survey, it just gives me feedback because I'm always trying to improve these talks. But you can, it's just like 5 questions. But if you put in your email and say you want to be on the newsletter, I'll add you to my newsletter. Like when I get back from Cambodia and Thailand, I'll be creating blog posts, things like that. If you want to see more of my storytelling, you can go to the website, click travelphotos.com, and go to the blog. I'm updating my blog. So I've just started this venture, click, within the last year. And I'm going back through a bunch of old blogs I created and re-editing the photos because some of them were edited in whatever style was popular at the time. And I'm trying to make them a little more timeless, so to speak. But you can kind of see storytelling there. And then in my newsletter, whenever I post a new blog, I put it in there so you can go on and see that. I also have an Instagram. You can follow me there. So thank you very much for having me. Any questions?
I just switched to the room mic, so you're not live anymore.
Okay.
You carry. Sorry, Bob, unmute yourself and ask that question because I couldn't catch it before it vanished.
Hey, great presentation. Just your timing is pretty good. I'm going to Morocco in April.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so a lot of things, you were talking about, especially around markets, colors, and I'm really looking forward to spice markets, all that kind of stuff. But my question is on the flash. I have a Sony camera, so it keeps it small, but my flash is probably the size of my Sony camera. So do you carry like a mini flash or something like that versus a full-size flash that seems like could be intimidating, or is it an on-camera flash?
Yeah, no, I don't like on-camera flash. It's too direct. It doesn't give you any shape. So I have a full-size speed light that I take. When I'm photographing people, I have it hidden away. It's in my bag. I only bring it. I have entire trips where I don't bring it out once, where I don't pull out the flash. It's just like if I'm going out at night or if I see a very specific situation. Like if I'm in a market, like in Morocco kind of thing, I'll shoot that just available light. I won't use the flash in those situations. I try never to shoot above 1600 ISO. Anytime I get higher than that, I get unhappy with the noise in my photos. Now, Lightroom has gotten crazy just in the last few months as far as its denoising and how good it is. But I still, if I can shoot at 1600 or lower, I do. But I try and shoot available light in those situations as much as possible. So the flash isn't a distraction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So for the, and I was kind of more around the movement scenario, kind of things later. I don't know. I was debating on whether or not to bring a flash since you brought it up, but basically on what you just said, probably don't bring one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really big on weight on a trip.
Yep.
Because the more weight you have, the larger the trip is, especially the older we get. And so I travel as light as I can. I am not comfortable not taking a flash personally, because I just don't want to miss that shot. I'm in that country probably for once in my life, and I don't want to leave going that, oh, if I only had a flash, I know what I could have gotten there. So for that purpose, I'll always take one, but I can totally understand not taking one too.
Okay, and what you take is a full-size flash.
It is. Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other questions, comments?
I got a question for you.
sure.
When you get back home, do you journal your experiences or do you let the pictures do that for you?
It's a combination.
Okay.
So if you look at my blog, you'll see text in there.
Okay.
I think the comment, 1,000, a picture says 1,000 words isn't always true. A picture says a lot, but there's a lot of questions left unanswered too.
And the reason I asked that is I just came back this past weekend and it's like, I have a lot of pictures, but man, I better write some of this stuff down because you cannot capture all the details
Right.
in one single photo.
And vlogs are great for that. Now, when I create an album from a lot of my trips.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I talk about in, coming back from a trip, how to share your photos. I don't put text in those because I feel like it's a distraction to the photos, like to have captions, that kind of thing. Nobody's looking through one of my albums without me being there. I mean, they're just sitting on my coffee table at home kind of thing. It's not like they're out in the world and people are flipping through my albums, right? And so I have the opportunity to explain what that was, what my experience was. And I think it's a distraction. But now the blog, people that I don't even know are going there and reading through the blog. So in that case, I feel like it adds to the story.
The other reason I asked that is I took some unique pictures of my trip of a lot of people didn't even realize that it's there. There's a drive-in volcano.
Okay.
So I got some, fairly decent shots of the volcano, but I came back and did a little research and I added that to my memory. It's like, man, I better write this stuff down. Yeah, it's some important stuff.
Honestly, for my blogs, what I'm doing these days is I'm using AI. So I will upload all the images to the blog without publishing it publicly. Tell AI to go through, look at the images, and a lot of times it sees a site or whatever and it knows right where it is. And I'll write my take on it. And I just kind of, puke it onto the paper, so to speak, just put my thoughts. I don't worry about good sentence structure or any of that. And then I combine the two. And it puts it together, and then I go through and do another round of editing. And my blogs are so much better than they were before. They have a lot more information that's useful to the reader than they did before. Because sometimes, I'm in a country for 2 weeks. I don't remember, which small town that was that my bus happened to go through, where it'll pick it out. So I'm using AI more and more for that kind of stuff.
I've taken a fair amount of pictures actually out at sea too in some of my journeys. And, you go back to some of your sunset pictures and even go into other pictures. Out at sea, you see some incredible sunsets. I never get up early enough for the sunrises, but the sunsets, spectacular. And out at sea, especially in the Caribbean where I was, the weather can change in a heartbeat. Yeah. So you have to be really prepared.
Yeah. That's great.
Beautiful weather patterns out there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love photographing off of Key West.
Yeah.
About your use of depth of field, I don't know if you really specifically pointed it out, but your use of depth of field and specifically in that picture of the Parisian magazine that had Notre Dame on it, I think that would have just been a picture of a magazine if you would have used it been at like F8 or F16 or something, but it was really, really great.
Yeah, I didn't really get into the technical aspects. I mean, I know a lot of you guys are shooting regularly, and I didn't want to talk down to you at all. But the technical aperture, shutter speed, ISO, the combination of all of it is key to what I do. If I didn't understand that and use it correctly, my photos wouldn't have the power that they have. I'm very thoughtful about that. I'm shooting fully manual all the time.
I know what I'm shooting and why, and hopefully that comes through in the photos. So thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And for any of you that if you're just wanting to get better with your photography, I just shot a lot. That's how I got to where I am. There's millions of photos. You just shoot a lot. And I was my own worst critic. Every time I looked back, I'd be like, oh, if I would have only done that, or let me try that next.
Yeah, and on that note, I look at pictures I've taken like 7 years ago, it's like, man, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But back then, it's like, wow, it's really good.
Exactly. Yeah, I started painting a couple of years ago. And so I've been doing oil paintings and gouache, and it's gone so well. If you're interested, I have a show coming up at the gallery in April. But I look back at just what I did a year ago, and I'm like, I can't believe I thought this was a good painting. So I'm sure I'll look back at what I'm doing now and do the same thing.
Well, what a great presentation, McCory. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Thanks for coming down here. Any last comments from the Zoom world out there?
We'll give the applause too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, McCory, for being here in person. We love that.
Yeah.
And, we had a great turnout here. I appreciate all of you guys for coming down here in person as well. I think it's just really adds to the show, if you will. Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's fun having a room full of people.
Yeah.
I a lot of times my talks are to like 3-4 people.
That's awesome.
It's not awful. It's nice because you can have a lot more like personal conversation about what they're doing and stuff. I enjoy it, but it's also nice to speak to a full room. So, yeah.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
I'm going to sign off here. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks for our chairs competitions.
really wants to, she doesn't